Yeah, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I usually keep my videos at 10 minutes, so hence my mobile phone stopped the record. It's okay. We'll just pick up where we left off because discussing the Tree of Light is taking longer in general. In any case, Hod is ruled by the Archangel Michael. And in case I forgot to mention, Tiferet is ruled by the Archangel Raphael. The next Sevira is Netzach, represented by the planet Venus. Netzach stands for all positive and warm emotions. Let me put it that way. Basically, emotions or energies that are the opposite of anxiety, fear, and so on. Netzach stands for openness, it stands for warmth, it stands for serenity, it stands for completeness, and so on. And it also stands for abundance, but to a lesser extent. Basically prosperity, not necessarily abundance, mild prosperity. Yesod, represented by the moon, stands for all things clairvoyant, basically all things astral. Okay, Yesod stands for the spirit world, as the average person loosely describes it. It's ruled by the Archangel Gabriel, and Netzach is ruled by the Archangel Anael or Haniel. They have a lot of angels. A lot of the rulers have multiple names, of course, several names, but they all point back and refer back to the same entity. And Yesod also rules over the element water. Aside from the astral sphere, basically all things spiritual, basically every sphere in which a spirit is able to reside itself, basically everything that is immaterial but more spiritual in nature, ethereal or astral, is represented by the sphere Yesod, which in its turn is represented by the moon. And Yesod also represents emotions, since it rules the moon, it rules water as an element, and water represents one's emotions. So basically, if you were to emotions in itself are also immaterial and more ethereal in nature. If applied to a person, you'd have to say that you really have to dissect a person mentally in order to be able to even catch a glimpse of their emotions, unless they display their emotions openly. And last but not least, we have the Sefira Malkut, which is represented by the last sphere on the Tree of Life, which is Earth. The name already says for itself. It represents all things material. It represents all things material. And this is ruled in turn by the Archangel Sandalphon. He was also the prophet, similar to Metatron. He was the prophet Elijah, and God rewarded him for his virtuosity and his grandioseness by turning into the Archangel Sandalphon. And again, like I said, all energies from the Tree of Life, basically, every energy that is sent out by God and that has to travel across all the roads of the Tree of Life, all the pathways, eventually end up in Malkut. Basically, Malkut is the physical manifestation, okay, not literally. Malkut is basically all those energies from the Kabbalah, from the Tree of Life, manifesting into the material world. That is, in short, what Malkut stands for. Now I'm also going to briefly treat the Tree of Death. The Tree of Death is simply the anti-Kabbalah. It represents opposing forces, basically forces that oppose the Tree of Life. And like I said, everything has a counterpart, everything has a polar opposite. So it's no wonder that the Tree of Life in itself, despite the fact that in the Tree of Life, at the very least, some of its aspects and some of its Sephirot, they oppose each other. In that same way, individually, the Tree of Life as a whole also has a counterpart, which is the Tree of Death. The Tree of Death basically represents the opposing forces of all of every Sephira, and those forces are called the Qliphoth. So basically, one negative anti-aspect of creation is called the Qliphoth. For example, we're going to start from top to bottom again. The first one is Thaumiel, which opposes Keter, where Keter stands for unity, and it stands for basically everything falling under God and God's supreme will. Thaumiel stands for duality, it stands for division, and that's why Thaumiel also has, it depends on your sources, okay? But in general, Thaumiel is said to be ruled by two entities, Satan and Moloch. Moloch's name is mentioned in the New Testament. He has pagan origins. I think he was worshipped by, I think the Phoenicians. Yeah. The Phoenicians. If not, then you'll have to forgive me. You can just look it up yourself. But in any case, Moloch is he has pagan origins. He was worshipped by as a pagan god first, and then he is demonized. He was demonized by Christians and by Judaism, I think. But in any case, yeah, generally this is the thing that Satan rules over, the clifford, this aspect that Satan rules over, and it stands for diversity, it stands for apartheid, it stands for duality. Okay, and that's why it's also said that these two, Satan and Moloch, are at war with each other constantly within this anti-sphere. I'm not going to discuss the Tree of Death completely because it's not necessary to do so. Things can get complicated. So I'm just going to treat a few spheres. It's not necessary, like I said in the beginning, it's not necessary to overcomplicate things. Plus, it's also going to make the video way too long. Another sphere is Tagirion, for example, which opposes the normal sun, where Tiferet and the represented by the sun basically radiates life, and that in itself is beauty. Life-giving, basically life-giving in itself is beautiful. And where Tiferet has those properties, Tagirion, also known as the black sun, has the exact opposite. In the way of properties and attributes. Tagirion is like the anti-sun or the black sun, but that doesn't mean that Tagirion necessarily takes life or that Tagirion is life-absorbing. Tagirion also radiates life, but it radiates some kind of anti-life. I have enough experience with this in my workings with the black sun. If you're interested, just look up on my blog the black sun exercise, and you'll see that basically highlights in the notes and displays my experience with the black sun. But Tagirion is Tagirion is a heavy dose. Okay, the Tree of Death in general is not recommended at all. I really don't recommend it if you're a beginning occultist, to astral travel to the Tree of Death, to astral travel to any of its aspects. It's really going to take a toll on you. I remember when I did it as a beginner, and it just completely knocked me out mentally. I was like this for 3 days straight, and everything seemed meaningless. It was like life had no meaning anymore. Not that I was suicidal, but it seemed I was literally devoid of life. Let me put it that way. That is the effect that the Tree of Death can have on you, but that's logical based on its name. It was just my own fault. I just dove in head first without basically evaluating anything. But again, I was a tremendous beginner at this point. I wasn't even worthy of being called a neophyte. I wasn't even a beginner. I was a beginner's beginner, to put it that way. In any case, that's what Tagirion is. And this anti-sun, this black sun, doesn't have life-absorbing qualities, but it radiates the opposing energies, okay, of Tiferet. Instead of giving life, let's just say it radiates death. Let me put it that way. It radiates energy that is devoid of life. It radiates energy that is completely cold and lifeless. That's why I remember when I astral traveled to Tagirion 2, it was completely black. I couldn't see a thing with my eyes. It's ruled by by someone that also has an entity that also has pagan roots, the entity Belphegor, which is also demonized. This entity was. I also have some experience. I've invoked Belphegor a couple of times. This entity is basically the ruler of Tagirion, and he lit a pathway for me. He's generally very friendly and helpful and everything, so that's not a problem. But yeah, I'm not gonna drift off course. Okay, that is basically what Tagirion holds. Also, in a nutshell, when I did the Black Sun exercise, that's the exact same impression that I got from the Black Sun, that the Black Sun is Tagirion, because when I astral traveled, basically the exercise means that you're supposed to astral travel and then go outside and then envision that instead of a normal sun, you've got a black sun, and just watch the day go by and watch that black sun do its work and rise in the west and set in the east. Yeah, and I did that, and yeah, the black sun felt exactly that way. It was completely cold when I went outside. There was no one out on the street. There was no sign of life whatsoever. It was completely cold. I'm talking about 10 degrees. It was winter. It was the middle of winter, a harsh winter, and that's the energy that the black sun gave off. Even its rays were almost like icicleish in nature. They were like tiny little beads of snow, tiny little snow droplets or whatnot. And yeah, that's what the black sun basically felt like. I found the entire experience very interesting. But the black sun was really it really took a toll on me. Yeah, it was pleasant, but at the same time, I could sense the fact that that the black sun was basically killing everything. It was devoid of life. It radiates anti-life, and and yeah, those are enough examples I can list. Okay, with the three of that, I've highlighted Thaumiel and Tajirion. Thaumiel has no planet attached to it. It's just the anti-sphere of Keter, represented by Uranus or Pluto, depending on your point of view and your source. And Tajirion is again is the anti-sun. It opposes Tiferet, the normal sun within the Kabbalah.